So Metro Exodus is not going to be available on Steam. It's going to be an Epic Store exclusive, and it's fair to say that the internet has had a meltdown. Now, I was very tempted to try and do some, memeing and a mild bit of mockery at the reaction because I thought it might be amusing, but honestly, I want to treat this subject quite seriously because although some of the meltdowns have been somewhat dramatic, I actually think on the whole, most people have got reasonably valid points and they are actually highlighting a problem we're going to have to deal with sometime in the near future. For those of you that don't know, Metro Exodus was going to be on sale on Steam, and in fact people have pre-ordered it on Steam and they still have access to that pre-order, but very recently it was announced that the game would no longer be selling on Steam and would be an Epic Game Store exclusive, and it happened so quickly most people didn't even have time to go off and buy a Steam version of the game. And the fact that they will now have to install the Epic Game Launcher and buy the game there is causing a lot of anger. Now, you will hear a lot of arguments being made about how it's not consumer friendly to have exclusives and how this sort of business practice is terrible and it sets a bad precedent for the community. But if you listen to the people complaining long enough, at some point they will probably mention the fact that they just don't want to buy the game from another store. They want their game on Steam. They want all of their games on Steam. They don't want another launcher. They're quite happy as it is. And honestly, every time you read these comments or even hear people making videos, you'll tend to get the sense that that really is the biggest reason. And honestly, I can relate to that. It's nice to have all of your games in one place. It's nice to have just one launcher. It is kind of annoying to have lots of different launchers on your desktop or have to have them running if you want the game to run fast, so you don't need to wait for the launcher to boot up. Like, you know, most of us have Steam running on our game machines from the moment it boots up, so if we start a game, it starts quickly. We don't want 12 launchers running. We don't want that to be the case, so it's kind of annoying. And I totally and utterly get this sentiment. However, we are going to have to get used to it. We really are, because it's inevitable. It is absolutely inevitable that this is going to continue to be the trend. Now, some people have sort of said, well, but why? Why can't we just have one place to buy games on PC? We have only one store on PlayStation and one store on Xbox. And the answer is, yeah, you do, because those consoles have the ability to force you. PC doesn't. And indeed, PC shouldn't. PC is about options. There should not be something that forces you to buy all of your games from Steam and nowhere else, you know, to sort of outlaw places like GOG or outlaw companies making their own stores. That should not be a thing. And if there isn't something that prevents them from doing it, it will appear and game developers will end up deciding which of the platforms to use based upon what is best for them. Now, in the Metro Exodus case, I actually think the way they've done this is not best for them, because whilst I do understand if you go with the Epic Store, you keep more of your money, and let's face it, that's the reason. And while some people will be sort of, oh, I knew it was all about the greed and the money, yeah, right, and like, they're selling the game. They're selling the game. They want to make money. One of the distributors is saying we will take 13%, and the other is saying we'll take 30%. That's a bit of a no-brainer, or at least it would be if they'd made this decision a long time ago. Because honestly, the way this has happened, it's created a bit of a backlash. So, will this actually hurt their bottom line in the end? It might, but we're going to have to accept that, you know, companies will be thinking like this. And hopefully what this will do is it will cause Steam to adapt and have to lower the cut they take. So there will be some give and take, although this will reduce the power Steam has. It will reduce the profits they make. And so, you know, what will that do to, well, what will that cause them to have to adapt to? Will they be able to continue being the powerhouse they are? And these questions are actually pretty important because for a lot of us, the nervousness about buying games from a store like Epic is, what happens if Epic goes out of business? We're just going to lose all of the games we own on that system. I don't quite know how it works. But then we have the same problem on Steam. We just sort of assume that Steam is forever, don't we? We do make that assumption. But many of us will remember a time before Steam. And I've been a big fan of Steam since the very start. I have loved it because I'm too lazy to go to the game store. I love Steam. It's been brilliant. It's been awesome. But in actual fact, there's no reason why they couldn't just suddenly have some problem and go out of business. What happens with all the games if we don't have them downloaded? Do we not own them anymore? Because that is a very, very real problem. And at some point, it's probably going to happen. Maybe it'll happen to one of the smaller companies. But maybe it'll happen to something like GOG or Steam. And when it does, the gaming community is going to have a meltdown. And there may be absolutely nothing they can do about it. But it might be what causes us to rethink the entire concept of, games ownership. Perhaps there should be some centralized database. Perhaps there should be some sort of system whereby you own a key. Maybe you already can, for all I know. I've never really thought about it. Maybe there's a way for me to go and get backup keys for all of the games I own on Steam so that if they go out of business, I can apply those keys somewhere else. However, that gloomy idea, believe it or not, is not going to stop the inevitable push towards many different stores and indeed these big publishers having their own stores. This is pretty inevitable. I know there are people out there going, no, we can fight this. We can fight this. You really can't. I mean, even if you get half the gamers in the world to refuse to buy a game from such and such a company, I think the writing is on the wall. We've seen this from these companies. We've seen this, with Origin. We've seen it with Ubisoft. We're going to see it with Bethesda. They are going to release their games on their own platform and, enough people will engage with it. And any losses they make will probably be covered by the fact that they're actually making all of the profit rather than having to split it with another company. It's just inevitable, and in many ways we should have seen this coming a long time ago. We've gotten way too comfortable with Steam, and things are going to change in the future. They are. Now, that is always scary. Change is always scary, but it's also something that's always happening, which means pretty much the entire community is destined to be in a constant state of fear, panic, and outrage, but that's pretty much how it is anyway. But honestly, I think what will happen with this sort of thing is we will see a coming together of minds. We will see a sort of natural evolution of the digital distribution mentality, and we may end up seeing a new way to own these games. Or maybe instead of owning most of our games, we will just rent them on some sort of subscription system like Netflix. I mean, Xbox already has, is it the Game Pass, where you spend $10 a month and you can play pretty much any of a whole collection of games. Maybe that will become the most common way to play your games. Maybe you'll want to have a few games that you own, and those will be the special games you absolutely love, and you will buy them and download a backup of them just in case something happens. I don't know. There's going to be some kind of change, but it probably won't occur until we've had at least one of these disasters, at least one time where one of these platforms has gone down and everyone's lost their games, and people will start, saying, right, well, I'm not buying digital downloads unless I have some sort of guarantee. GOG allows you to back up the entire game and keep a copy of it, which is great. But let's face it, a lot of us use these digital download services because we don't want to keep a copy of the game. We just want the option to go back and play it at some later date. So I think something has to change. What and how, I do not know. However, that does bring up the subject that I alluded to earlier, the idea that we're going to have to get used to multiple launchers on our PC. We're probably going to have to get used to that for now. But I predict that will change. The PC gaming community is famous for this. I think we will come up with a solution ourselves. There will be some, open source project whereby someone will make a universal launcher. In fact, I think there are even programs that can kind of be used in that way a little already. But I think someone will make something very specific, very easy and user-friendly that will sort of launch all the different launchers, or be able to launch the games that those launchers launch directly from itself. So you'll have one launcher running, you'll run a game, and that launcher will have already logged into the various different places you need to be logged into, but it'll only have one very lightweight client, and it will just run the game for you. This is something that I think is almost inevitable as well. Now, some people might be thinking, well, aren't there some sort of legal issues with that? And the answer is no, not really. Because whilst, you have made certain agreements regarding what you do with the game, how you boot the game up is actually pretty much up to you. You can already play around with how you boot games up, boot them from shortcuts, boot them via other programs. Although, if it's a multiplayer game and you boot it via another program, of course you may have some issues there with cheat detections and that sort of thing. But the idea of having a universal launcher, I think, is going to be something that takes hold. And it may even be the case where the universal launcher may even have a universal store, and it will integrate with all the different stores and search through them. If you search for a game, it'll tell you which stores you can find the game on. And I can actually imagine a day where these companies, the companies who have these digital distribution stores, don't just continue to support the APIs they have, because they already have APIs that let you sort of link into them, but they expand upon them, and indeed one day perhaps even just abandon the idea of their own launcher, because the idea of a universal launcher will become so normal, it'll become like a web browser. So, you might find this universal launcher gets made, and then someone else will make another one that does something similar but has some new features that everyone likes. And then Microsoft will make one and ship it as default with the next version of Windows, and everyone will say it's crap because it's Microsoft, but about half the world will probably use it regardless. And you may just have this day where the universal launcher becomes just part of it, and it integrates with all the different stores. I don't know, I'm just spitballing now. But I see that sort of thing as being the future of the way we buy games on a PC, because that just seems to be the way things happen. On a PC, things will crop up, things will change, people will get irritated by something, and then some clever bugger will come up with a nice little tool that makes life so much easier for everyone, and that becomes the norm. And things that, once upon a time that we had things like TeamSpeak and stuff like this that were very niche little things. Now we're all on Discord servers, and most games come with voice communication anyway. It's become expected, it's become normal. Every single solitary thing you can think of that we accept now in the gaming community as par for the course at some point was a specialized niche and just grew and grew and grew. Universal launcher, probably going to be one of those things, in my opinion. That's what I'm predicting. So to summarise my somewhat rambly thought process so far, I think what I'm saying is I understand the outrage at what has happened with Metro Exodus, and I do understand why people want only one store and only one launcher. I pretty much am the same myself, to be honest. That's what my instincts are. I want everything in one place. I want everything to be stable. I want everything to be predictable, comfortable. I want to stay in my comfort zone, thank you very much. And I don't want things to change. But they're going to. And some of those changes are going to be quite disruptive. Some of those changes may even be disastrous. We may have a disaster where we lose all of our games on one particular store. This could be a thing in the future. But at the same time, there will be lots of little developments that make life easier at the same time. And things will come and they will go and they will get a little worse and then they will get a lot better. Because that's the one thing I have noticed with gaming over the decades. Whilst we do get a lot of these drama moments, we do get a lot of these outrage moments, the general march has been towards everything being better. A lot of people do talk about how gaming is in a terrible state today. It's awful. It's not as good as it was when, and then pick the year they were the happiest with. I mean, for me, it probably, I don't know when I was the happiest actually. I've been pretty happy with with gaming on the whole most of my life, or at least, you know, the part of my life where gaming has been a thing. So, you know, but that's what tends to happen. But the fact of the matter is, gaming, in my opinion, has just gone from strength to strength to strength with the few hiccups in between. This is a hiccup. It's an annoyance. But we'll get past it. Having to boot up a second launcher is mildly aggravating, but we've gone through worse. And if you're young, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about. But some of us will remember playing computer games and having to load them from tape drives and spending 7 minutes listening to for 7 minutes from a tape recorder, only for, you know, the dog to nudge the table and the whole thing abandons and we have to start it again. So, you know, that was a thing. And it isn't anymore. So, I'm saying things get better, okay? So there you go. Sorry for the long ramble about it. I just wanted to sort of weigh in on this and probably depress everyone even more. Sorry about that.